All right. Sorry. Oh, where'd my camera go? There we go. Sorry, I was having some difficulty unmuting myself for some reason. Can everyone else unmute
Yep.
on their own? Okay, I was having difficulty there for a moment, but hopefully everyone else can as well. No, stop. Leave that over there. All right, well, let's give a moment. It looks like Eric has someone joining him in his office. Thank you, Eric, for joining from town hall so that we could make this work.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry for any confusion, but hopefully it's working out. I have Cynthia Rainey with me here.
Hi, Cynthia. No, I'm so thankful that you figured it out when you did and not at 6:45 when we were all arriving to no room that was available. So in the future, I think an artifact of the times, we don't have a regular space, for a recurring meeting reserved. So I didn't realize that needed to happen. I guess I should have, but I didn't, because the past 2 meetings we've done in person and it's been okay. But of course tonight, probably or possibly in preparation for tomorrow night's town meeting, special town meeting, the room we were going to use is reserved, and it was a little too late in the day to find another spot. So thank you for being flexible, and I'm sure nobody minded not getting out of your house tonight. Cold night in January. It's actually not that cold, but it's just disturbing in itself. So, all right, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have quorum. Woo. Excellent. So I think we can go ahead and get started. Given that hopefully John might make it. I think he's the only one now that is missing. So we'll go ahead and start. Welcome to the January 18th Climate Action Advisory Board meeting for the town of Concord, January 18th, 2023. And I will pop up the agenda so that everybody can see. Let me find it. All right. Let me make that a little smaller. Well, actually, maybe that's okay. So we'd intended to be in person, but instead we're virtual. And hopefully that means that a couple of the regular members of the public can also join us. Let me just make sure I go down to the end of the agenda. Brian, you okay to take notes for tonight to be meeting clerk, or do you need to pass it to someone else?
I can do it tonight.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And I do have the upcoming meeting clerks on here, but certainly if you are not going to be at an upcoming meeting, let me know as soon as you can so that I can change that around. I don't go in any particular order. All right. Unfortunately, we'll just keep moving. Unfortunately, from our December meeting, we attempted to do a joint meeting with CSEC. We did move the meeting from our regularly scheduled 3rd Wednesday to the 2nd Wednesday of that month. And we were not able to get a quorum available. I think it was a busy time. Neither was CSEC, as it was. So we have no meeting minutes from that meeting. But Brad did do an amazing job of prepping us for the warrant article that we ultimately ended up sharing with the select board, and that the select board, I believe, is moving through. We can talk about that more in a moment, related to the specialized energy code. So we'll talk about that as an agenda item later in the meeting. For upcoming meetings, just, we'll kind of go through the exercise, but there's an agenda topic that may change this. But I did want to highlight, I guess, the upcoming dates. We have one February 15th, which is before February vacation week, for those of you that might impact. And then March 15th, and then April 19th. And April 19th, I believe, does fall within school vacation week. I get that doesn't impact everyone, does some of us. So we can maybe table this conversation until we get a little later in the agenda, but at least you've got a heads up on our upcoming meetings currently. I think it'd still be good to try for hybrid. Obviously, a bit of a snafu tonight, but I think if we can make it work, it seems to be working fairly well. And let's say we've only done it a couple of times as CAB, but I know for some of the select board meetings or the chair breakfast that we do each month, the virtual seems to be working fairly well. So I would suggest that we continue with that unless there's an opposition to that among the board members, that allows folks flexibility. All right. Any questions? Any comments? Keep moving along.
No.
Not a whole lot of business to get through, which is good. So I'll give a quick update from my perspective, and then I'll probably speak up later regarding specific topics. Just a quick update from the chair's breakfast this morning. The one bit of, I think, one committee that I felt was most useful to report out on, Brian Folds, who used to be on CAB, is he now the chair, Matt, of CMLP board?
He is.
Yeah, okay. So he was presenting, just kind of giving a report out, and talked about their plan to complete smart metering, as well as they're working on their time of use rate updates. And I didn't quite catch the plan on that, but it sounded like smart metering, they're working to have complete install by within this year, 2023, or at least the majority. And then time of use rates, did I understand him correctly that there would be a proposal at town meeting related to that, or did I misunderstand?
I think they were trying to wrap it up before the end of the terms of the current board.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
And then after town meeting, they have on their docket to go back and review portfolio in terms of energy sources. So that would probably be around mid-year that they would be taking a good look at that. They're also continuing to look at the solar feasibility on the middle school. That I guess he didn't say much more about that, but I guess that's proceeding forward, regardless of the vote and all of that, which is sort of separate, because that was a separate article, if I'm not mistaken, to continue to look into the feasibility of adding solar. So that was one, I felt very relevant update. It's been a while since we've had a direct communication with CMLP. And so it might be something for us to add to the 2023, set of agenda items or potential agenda items, to basically have Brian or someone else of his designation to come to our meeting and give us an update, so that we can, be aware and ask questions, and just hear where they're at on the plan, the strategic plan. I know they were, when we talked with them last, they were planning to update, but I don't know where that stands either. So, and maybe Eric, as you get more connected in that realm, you will start to, you know, be more up to date on that as well. So that's about all I have currently from my perspective. Other than the other specific stuff we'll talk about, so I don't need to bring that up now. Any questions? Any of that? Okay. Eric, I don't know if you are prepared to. I didn't really give you a ton of heads up, but to give you know, a brief update from your perspective, it might be good just to fill us in on what you've been doing. It's been about a month since you've been on board now, except that then there was a holiday week in there, so probably doesn't even feel that long, or maybe it feels longer. I don't know. So.
Sure. Yeah. I've been busy, very busy, trying to meet a lot of people, a lot of departments across town, committees, people on committees, organizations within town, residents within town. So I've had lots of meetings with lots of people. Some that I'll just kind of mention quickly. I've met with folks over at Public Works, and as Courtney well knows, and some of the rest of you know, the just started the process for the integrated water resources plan for the town. Just had the first workshop of 3 over at with Public Works. Was that last week?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, last week. So that's kind of off and running. I met early on with Walter Latta over at the fire department about the hazard mitigation plan. So that's going well. I think there's one piece left with the grant on that, which involves doing a sort of a site assessment for potential locations, new locations for fire and police department. So that's part of the grant, I believe. And I think that's the last piece that needs to happen. So the folks in charge of that had said they would reach out to me and this month to start talking about moving forward with that. I have not met with Dave Wood yet over at CMLP, but I did meet with Brian Folds and had a long conversation with him just to get some background on what's been going on with the light plant. Had touched base with him. My understanding is that the light plant owes the select board a report on solar, or an outline of a plan on solar.
They owe us a report, but they've told us they're giving us an outline.
An outline, is that? Yeah. Well, my impression from Brian was that the plant seems to be at the point where they say they can't really deliver a plan unless they do some reports first that will inform the plan. So I guess that's, my understanding was that it was supposed to be something that would get to the board by the end of 2022, by the end of the calendar year, but it sounds like that's kind of in limbo right now. And I'm sure that Matt and maybe others on the select board know a little bit more about that than I do at this point. But that's obviously something that needs to continue to be worked on, and hopefully there'll be some progress on that. I met with the schools. I met with Laurie Hunter over at schools, and have talked to them a little bit about what's going on with the middle school. There's a meeting next week with the school sustainability group that Cynthia's involved with next to me here. So I'll be meeting with them. There's the fossil fuel free building demonstration pilot program through DOER that Concord is currently positioned to be participating in. There's been some progress with that. There have been draft regulations for that have been released from DOER, and some draft language for articles. I've had some conversations with DOER and town council and some folks from some of the surrounding towns, Lexington and Acton, since the share counsel or share the law firms that have counsel elsewhere. So we kind of had a brief conversation last week with some of the DOER folks, just a smaller group, about about the draft regulations they just released and what that means for the different towns and where we are with articles that we're passing, and making sure that ducks are in a row and things are lined up, so that as this all happens, we'll be in a good position to hopefully be participating in that pilot program as one of those 10 towns. Related to that is the adoption of the specialized stretch code. I'll kind of defer to Brad, since I know he's going to be giving a little update on that next. Let's see what else. Yeah, I had some other conversations with some different entities in town recently. Had a conversation with Chris Sintros, who's the executive director of Newbury Court. He had reached out to me and seems to be interested in figuring out what help and or resources we might be able to provide or direct him to in order to have him come up with I guess more or less a sustainability plan for Newbury Court. So he's interested on a lot of fronts in terms of what they might be able to do looking forward to improve their efficiency and reduce their footprint over there, which I thought was encouraging. My understanding is that they're a fairly large consumer of energy for the town. So at the CSEC meeting last week, is it Mike McDonald, I think, who was suggesting that there might be some resources through National Grid, some engineering resources there who might be interested in helping out with some ideas and some thinking over there at Newbury Court. So I'll be looking at what we might be able to do to help them and help direct them towards moving forward with stuff there. And then was able to sit in last night with First Parish and learn more about their greening program for their campus, or the greening planning, I guess, for their campus, which at this point seems to be moving in the direction of geothermal and a lot of other efforts to green their campus as well. Got a bunch of other meetings set up in coming weeks to meet with lots of other groups and people to continue to get up to speed. And also got a call from the Globe last week from a reporter there who's interested in doing a 10-year anniversary story on the plastic water bottle ban. So we'll see where that goes. So apparently he claims he had covered it way back when. And probably much to his disappointment, he was, asking me how long I'd been here. He's looking for historical context. And unfortunately, I couldn't give him a whole lot of that. I mean, he was, obviously he's a reporter. He's looking for some angles. So he was, asking questions about, is there still tension? Or there's still people who don't like it? Those kind of things. And what does it mean? And, generally my response to him was just, kind of more focused on, Concord being very progressive and having a long history of being progressive towards climate change, sustainability, and all these things. And, the ban not necessarily being about immediate impacts, because he was asking about, are there what kind of impacts have we seen? And, it's not really something we can measure. We don't have a transfer station, so it's not like we could have been directly measuring, the rate of bottles showing up, water bottles showing up at a transfer station or something. But kind of, direct, I was, more talking to him about, sort of bigger picture and it, being a statement and hopefully, leading to action elsewhere and those kind of things. So he had asked if I could, maybe help him to find some historical references, in terms of people who've been around.
Sure.
And I think he wants to talk to Carrie as well, thinking maybe she has a little bit more historical perspective than I do. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that because I'm sure there's, perhaps some of you who have some of your own perspectives on that, or and just kind of letting you know that there was, people asking about that. So I think that's largely, I mean, there's a number of other smaller things just in terms of meeting with people and things like that probably aren't too noteworthy at this point. But I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, I guess I should also mention that I'm scheduled to be meeting with the Rotary Club soon and the Concord Business Partnership. Yes, thank you. So I did meet somebody from their group in passing, and I'll be meeting with them as well. So,
Great.
yeah. So, other things like I've met with public health with Aaron, the transportation planner. We've been talking about a couple things there. So anyway, I'll sort of stop there. I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has them or try to fill in any blanks.
It sounds like the grand sustainability tour, which is great.
Yeah.
But no, good that you're getting connected. Matt has a question, has had his hand up here.
Yeah, regarding the demonstration project, of course, we have got Article 1 tomorrow night at special town meeting. And we currently have it on the consent calendar, so it wasn't intended to be, discussed. Do you know if there are any amendments required to true it up with these regulations, or are we good to go? So
I reached out to town council. So Mina, the town council, has been involved in this. He's been very proactive in terms of trying to coordinate again with Lexington and because he also represents Lexington, and then one of his colleagues represents Acton. So he's been proactive in terms of reaching out directly to DOER and our contact there. And he was the one who actually put together this meeting we had the other week with the intent of saying, what if anything the towns need to be doing at this point to try to line things up, knowing that all the towns are kind of moving forward with things and want to make sure that their timing is good. So there's, Lexington has, language that they've passed. I believe Acton has some too. So I had asked him whether he thought, looking at what we have at the article, whether he thought there was anything that we would need to add any more specificity or details at this point, because it looked like, so I took a look at Lexington, and it seems like theirs is significantly more detailed than ours is at this point. But he assured me that we should be fine with moving forward with what we have for now, with the knowledge that once the regulations, once they have public feedback on the regulations, and then probably wind up, modifying them in some way that, at some future point, we'd have the opportunity to, make some edits if we need to make sure that they're lined up with.
Okay, so they're only draft regulations at this stage.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay, then, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so
okay.
So I think
we can't really align to draft
draft
legislation. Okay, thanks.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think they hope to have the draft regulations finalized by, I think their timeline was March. So at that point, I think we'd be able to, better have a sense of what changes we might want to consider making on our.
It's kind of too bad, of course, the annual town meeting warrant is already close. Our maneuvers, like, you can do a special town meeting within annual town meeting. So it's not beyond out of the possibility that we could throw something in there if we need to.
If we had to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for now, he seemed to think we'd be fine with moving forward with what we have.
Any other questions for Eric from CAB? Okay.
I do see a hand up.
Pamela, yeah. Pamela, you have your hand up.
Is it all right to speak?
I think it is. If you have a question for Eric, I think waiting till the very end, you might forget. So,
Yes.
but if you can keep it brief, that'd be great.
Is there any chance that we're going to be, if we are able to adopt the stretch code, if it will allow us to require new construction to be all electric?
Yeah. So the specialized stretch code that we're hoping will be adopted, that is specifically for new construction. It doesn't necessarily require all electric for new construction. There's two options. One is that if you build a new structure, it'd either be all electric. The second is that you could have some fossil fuel infrastructure, but you also have to wire the building so that it would be electric ready for future. And there's also a component where you would have to have some amount of solar that goes along with it. So I think the intent and maybe hope with that is that people who are building, that the builders, it's almost a disincentive for them to put the fossil fuel lines in some ways in terms of construction costs and things like that, because they're also still going to have to electrify the building and have a solar component as well. So the specialized stretch code is specifically for new instruction. If the town moves ahead and becomes part of the fossil fuel free building demonstration program, the intent there is that it would be for new construction as well as major renovations, that the expectation would be all electric with some exceptions in some cases.
Yeah.
So the hope is the two would work together, right?
Yeah.
It's just that if we don't get it, we're going to have to find ways of incentivizing the buildings to do it, as long as we aren't legally allowed to
Mhm.
require it. And so I think we need to do that and prepare in case we don't get to be in the 10 community pilot program, because we no longer fit the affordable
Do
housing.
what we can.
And one other thing, Concord Green, where I live, is the board is looking into switching over to heat pumps, and they don't know much about it. And the current way Concord Green pays for the gas, which is used for heating and hot water, is to have it be part of the condo fee. There are no separate meters. And we really could use some expertise here to guide the board so that they just don't throw up their hands and say, oh no, this is too expensive and too complicated, we just can't do it. And I don't know who I should talk to get involved. Certainly not me. Because
Maybe that's something you could, reach out to Eric separately. And, Eric could help connect you. It sounds like you could use, some expertise coaching on that.
because it would need to be.
We have that. So, okay.
Yeah,
Could
sure.
think outside the box as to how to solve the problem of
Sure.
Yeah,
transition.
yeah.
That's
Pamela, if you want to reach out
encouraging.
to me, I'd be happy to help you with that.
Cool, thanks.
Good questions, Pamela. Thank you. All right. I'm just going to pop the agenda up here again quickly, but I think I like it better when we don't have that in front of us, because then we can see folks' faces a little bit bigger. But so let's switch over if we can now to hear a little update from Brad and or Matt related to the specialized code that Pamela was just asking about, kind of where things stand now, and next steps, and also then how we as CAB can support next steps if needed. Particularly, I think Brad, you've been sort of leading the charge on this. So want to give us an overview?
Sure. I'm having a hard time hearing today, in case
Okay.
I put together a small presentation that would be intended for whatever meeting we have at late February, a public meeting, because this is a pretty simple article. And I could go through it's basically like 3 slides without lots of detail, and the detail would go into handouts. So this is the text. It is slightly, the slides have a slightly changed text.
Okay.
And if you want me to share the screen, I could do that.
If you
Yeah,
think it's-
I also have the warrant as it stands now.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, with the text as it is now in the
Okay.
warrant.
Yeah, if you want to share it, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll just
This was the
quickly share
version
it
that I
because there's
had. Okay.
so it's now Article 23.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's
Great.
now in the warrant as Article 23.
Excellent. Excellent.
And it's the same text as Brad submitted. However, there's just this one
Hmm.
edit in the comment box.
Huh.
Oh, good. Good.
So it just clarifies that,
Yeah.
While the legislation allows municipalities to apply to a demonstration project, the state may or may not approve the town's application. So that just,
Oh, good.
wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Very good.
Otherwise, everything's all there.
Good.
I could give my very short and sweet presentation and get your comments, everybody's comments as to whether it needs more explanation or less explanation or whatnot. So this is,
I think that would be
uh,
great, Brad, if you want
okay.
to do that.
So can you see what's on my screen now? I don't need to really go into, maybe I
Yep.
should,
Yeah, no, you're fine. We can see it.
okay. This is, within the code, the town moderator suggested adding the number of the code of the that describes in the law what the
Mhm.
stretch energy code is for residential and commercial. And in fact, the specialized stretch code is in appendices in them. So I don't know, maybe we don't need to change the text since it's already in the warrant. So all I have now, let me see, go one more here, is some slides of background without getting into any more detail than needed. For residents to understand, we adopted the stretch energy code in 2010, requiring a higher energy efficiency than the base energy code. Last year, the Department of Energy Resources revised and strengthened the stretch code significantly to support Massachusetts climate goals. Getting the updated stretch code is automatic for Concord since we already use the stretch code, and that's most of the changes that are going to happen. The stretch code update improves energy efficiency for both residential and commercial structures, allowing all electric or mixed fuels, which means it includes some fossil fuels in them, options, but with higher efficiency required for the mixed fuels. And the higher efficiency means it requires a lower home energy rating score than in the current code. And it also, in most cases, requires heat recovery, ventilation, and EV charging. So those are part of the stretch code that we get automatically. Oh, what am I? Oh, that's not, I was, so what we're voting on today is specialized provisions that are in the appendix to this stretch energy code. And those are additional requirements. New buildings need to be wired for electrification, to be electrification ready if they use the mixed fuel for residential or commercial or multifamily. Zero energy option is added for mixed fuels using solar PV or other renewables. I don't know what other renewables you would use. Solar PV is pretty much what makes sense here. And then there's some minor things like passive house design or zero energy option with the on-site solar would be required for multifamily greater than 12,000 square feet. And the detailed comparisons, since the building code has lots of details, are in the handout. But these bullet points here pretty much tell the story. What's the difference between the stretch code and the specialized stretch code, which we're going to vote to adopt? And then just repeating what we've already talked about. Last year, we voted at the annual town meeting and in previous meetings to require new buildings to be fossil fuel via home rule petition to the legislature, which turned into this 10-town pilot that we've talked about. And this may be so that would become effective if Concord was selected to be in one of the 10 communities. And in that case, most of the difference between the stretch energy code and the specialized stretch code pretty much go away, because we would only be using the all electric options for new construction. So that's pretty much what I have in a presentation. It's not a lot of detail. It's not super technical. More work would need to go into the, you know, the handout, ideally 2 sides of 1 page or something that residents could get. They can figure out, what is this? Look at a table with all the options and stuff like that.
I wonder if something like that, or, you know, a version of something like that might exist on DOER's website. They eventually provided guidance language for a warrant article, but it was after our warrant closed. So it unfortunately wasn't helpful to us, but that is there now. And so that might be that we could look, you know, to their website for something that we could at least start
we
from.
we can certainly
Right.
do that.
Yeah.
I think Brian has a question.
Yeah, Brian. You're on
I
mute.
can't hear you.
You would think after 2 years
I
to be
know.
able to operate, then 3 years.
The mute
But I'm
button.
not normally on Zoom, normally Google Meet. Anyway, so I thought that was a nice, clear presentation, because I thought it laid out the facts very clearly. And my question was, what's our spin on the overlap with the pilot? Because I presume the pilot has a lifetime of some duration, whereas a stretch code would presumably be a
that's
longer
good question.
duration.
I was going to ask
So the
the
fact that
same.
they overlap.
I was going to ask the same
Interesting.
question. I don't think there's a lifetime. Is there on the 10 communities?
I haven't seen one.
I think they're allowing us to be permanently require all electric.
Permanent pilot.
Where,
Permanent pilot,
where the pilot sort of means we're the first few communities, but it doesn't mean that we're temporary, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm,
At work
okay.
today, actually had a similar conversation about what a pilot really is anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I think traditionally it does mean temporary. It is a temporary condition, but it's, you know, be weird, I think, unless there's some reason it didn't work, right? And
Right.
I can't think what that would be. So good question.
And Eric has his hand up as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, so you know, Courtney had mentioned that there's this model rule that DOER has provided. So the meeting we had with them, you know, what they indicate is that they're not requiring adoption of that model rule, but I think they're hoping that all of the towns that would be participating would you know, have theirs mirror it pretty closely, and if not, then you're probably going to need to justify to them why not, just, you know, for the sake of consistency. One of the things I'll just mention about the draft regulations, in the draft regulations, they define major renovations, and that's not something we have in our language, you know, at the moment, which is one of the reasons why I had talked to town council to see if we needed to make, you know, changes to anything. You know, at this point, you know, when I asked them a little bit ago for the meeting tomorrow, but, you know, I think that's something we'll need to consider. One of the things that I haven't done, but we'll need to do is, you know, work with here in town with folks in building and folks in planning, I guess, and just, you know, I want to touch base with them and sort of be able to get their feedback on all of this, while there is a chance to have input, you know, to DOER on this. Also, just to make sure that, you know, here within the town, we're all sort of on the same page and supportive of all this. So I don't think they've really been involved in this yet, and I hope maybe somebody can correct me if that's not right. But, given that this is ultimately going to fall to building and maybe in some regards to planning, I just, kind of want to make sure that, they're vested in this process, at least on our end here in town. And then I also asked town council whether, there's any need to try to coordinate any of that feedback from building in different towns, from building departments in different towns. So I'll see what they say about that.
Brad, you did talk to the planning group, right? I thought you attended the meeting in December.
I presented the early version of this to them, and they gave me a little bit of useful feedback, on a little bit of wording, but not in great detail.
And I'll just mention that one other thing that, has kind of popped into my head yesterday when thinking about this is, I think there's a lot of people who want to see this pilot program be a big success. And I think there's also some interests who would prefer it not be a success.
Mm-hmm.
So as this unfolds, I don't think there's any expectations that it's going to be a perfect thing. And, I'm just wondering from like a media and PR standpoint, whether there needs to be some, coordination within and amongst the towns in terms of, how any messaging wants to be handled about this. But that's, something I'll talk to the group about and see. But I'll just thought I'd mention that in case anybody in this group has any thoughts related to that. So. Oh, and one other thing I did want to mention, sorry, is that if you didn't see it, there was an article in the Globe today about the specialized stretch code and the fact that Brookline and Watertown just adopted. Both adopted it. So Concord was mentioned as another town has said they're intending to, and they had a list of others, but there was an article about it in the Globe, and it was kind of interesting if you take a minute to look through what some of the comments on the article. It's just there's a lot of people who seem to be not happy about that and have negative feedback about that, whether it's intentionally sowing misinformation or whether it's people who don't know better, but there's just a lot of negative comments, which kind of goes back to what I was just saying about PR and messaging through all these different processes.
I mean, I think it's a fair comment. Not that the specialized code, obviously the process of putting it out there had its own public process. There's been, a number of public comment periods and hearings at the state level. But I think worth a discussion of, are we doing enough through the, ultimately, I guess at this point, it would go through the town meeting process, right? So it'd be through the public hearing process, but will that land? How will that land, I guess? And Matt, you have your hand up. Just wanted to.
Well, for the demonstration
if it's regarding that
project
or not.
aspect, yeah, for the demonstration project aspect, of course, it's just tomorrow night. And I was just going to respond to one comment that Eric made, which was that our bylaw does not specifically reference renovations. However, if you look at the language of the bylaw, it says, quote, new building, unquote, shall mean any new construction that will require heating or cooling and that is associated with a valid building permit application, including but not limited to construction on a vacant lot to replace a demolished building or a new accessory building constructed on an existing residential or commercial property. I mean, when I look at the not limited to, that to me encompasses, I mean, if you need to add heating or cooling, that would encompass renovations. I mean, I'm just a layman, but
yeah. So I guess I was just comparing it to what I saw. I think it was Lexington who seem to have very specific language and references to defining, renovation. So again, yeah, it's referenced, and maybe we need to be more specific, maybe we don't. But I guess I was looking at it comparatively to some of the other things I've seen in other towns. And also in my comment a minute ago about sort of perceptions and pushback and PR. I was saying that in the context of sort of the bigger program and the bigger picture and all the pilot towns, and I certainly wasn't suggesting that I was expecting a huge amount of that here in town itself, given the history of where we are with this and the support we've had. But I was looking at it sort of in the broader context of the bigger program.
I recall the original article that we had exempted commercial kitchens. Do you know if that's what the status of that is in the model code, or?
There are specific exemptions for laboratories and so forth. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it was commercial kitchens, scientific laboratories, and a couple other instances that would be exempted.
Public utilities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Medical offices, hospitals. Yeah.
Good.
And affordable housing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Matt, can you remind us when the public meetings, they're in late
So
February,
Feb
right?
27th is when the
27th,
select board
okay.
public hearing will be held. And so that's when the specialized stretch energy code will be discussed.
Okay. All right.
I should also mention that there's the citizen petition article 22. And the reason that I bring that up, that's on the municipal in-town solar generation task force. The reason I bring it up is because it references the Climate Action Advisory Board. So in case your ears are burning, it's suggesting that one liaison member would be from the Climate Action Advisory Board, chosen by the board. And then also, I think more importantly, updates on progress should be provided to CAB no less frequently than every 2 months. And CAB, this is the thing that I find surprising, CAB shall present the final plan to the town and to the light plant.
Huh.
I don't know why this task force doesn't, but so there it is.
Well, there you go.
So I just think that,
Thank you.
it's important that you be aware.
Yeah. That's helpful. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm assuming that was not put out by anyone on this board, but
No.
It was not.
okay.
Yeah, who put us up for that?
Yeah. I don't
Dean
know.
Banfield, apparently.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, he was the author of the solar article from last year as well, right? Because he came and talked with us about that when we were considering support, and ultimately did. All right. Well, I guess going back to our agenda. So I guess, but before we slide off of this stretch code, any other comments for Brad on what he's got in preparation? So the select board obviously is sponsoring that article, but Brad, I think, is prepared to support at the public hearing on the 27th. But I'm sure Brad would welcome any comments either tonight, or if you think on it for a bit and want to provide comments, I'm sure he'd be
Appreciate it.
open. Yeah. Okay. And thank you, Brad, for keeping that moving along on CAB's behalf. Appreciate that. All right. So in light of that, the next agenda topic is, I guess, interesting and timely, especially given Article 22 that we just read. So there have been, some conversations between a few folks related to CAB and our purpose and mission, as well as CSEC and CSEC's purpose and mission. And, and I think this question has been raised before, probably 6 to 12 months ago, I would say. But, being raised again in a different environment is, does it still make sense to have these two committees with seemingly different and yet sort of converging missions, if you will? And would it make sense at this point to combine these groups into one kind of overarching climate action committee? And so actually, Matt put together a potential draft charge that could apply to this overall climate action committee. So essentially, it would be eliminating the Climate Action Advisory Board as it stands and CSEC as it stands, and creating a new committee called the Climate Action Committee. And in your packet is the draft charge, but I'll put it up on the screen as well, just so that everybody can see it. So hopefully you had a chance to read it. If not, feel free to read quickly. But essentially, the feeling is more and more, and especially this, this last year, and I don't think that was just because we, didn't have a director at the helm, but it felt like it made sense for our two groups to talk and coordinate. And one example of something that maybe could benefit from both of our groups working on is the Energy Score initiative that CAB has been kind of moving along. And we've done sort of, or really Jake has done some of the research on that. I'm just moving this down, so if anybody's still reading, they can. But we kind of looked at it from a policy side, if you will, or a kind of an implementation side. But then, we've had a couple of conversations at recent joint meetings with CSEC that that group might be able to help in terms of outreach, which has been their sort of historic charge as CSEC, is to be the sort of the outreach arm, and CAB has been more on the policy and I guess that side of the house. And I guess the question is, at this point, is there more benefit to combining those efforts? So just, kind of walking through the purpose here would still be to review town procurement and operational policies, bylaws, rules, and regulations as it relates to sustainability and climate resilience, but also to look at ways to run impactful education and outreach programs, as well as to consider strategies to leverage state programs, federal programs, and funding opportunities. So some of the duties and responsibilities would the Climate Action Committee then would really be responsible for reviewing the climate-related data and reporting on those, developing tools to educate and provide outreach to businesses and the public, working hand in hand with CMLP, which I think is something that we've struggled a bit with as CAB to do effectively. And then to work with the sustainability director to identify short and long-term projects that we could move along, kind of similar to what CAB has been doing for the past couple of years. In this case, though, we would be paring down the two committees. I think both committees now have a membership of about 8 to 9 members. So this would be one action committee with 8 to 9 members. So, you know, it would, because I think actually both groups have struggled a bit, especially recently, to maintain their membership and to maintain quorum. And that would be, you know, it would certainly help us to do that. We have limited volunteers, we have limited volunteer hours. So, you know, so that would potentially help. And that's not to say that we couldn't draw, you know, other people in as specific project work would be taken on. Maybe it's a way that, you know, we can also get others involved that aren't as committed potentially, or don't want to take on as big a commitment. Maybe that's a better way to say it. So with that, I am going to,
Courtney, I just wanted
Yeah.
to note that there is a more recent draft that there aren't any changes to the initial sections. There's
Yeah.
just a change to the membership section to
Correct.
try to address the special circumstance that we have of two committees coming together and not wanting to kind of throw
Right.
anyone off the bus.
right,
if
right.
you will.
Yeah.
Let me just share the latest
Okay.
language for that, just so people understand what we're talking about here. So what it says is, if you're on the CAB or CSEC, that you know, you're eligible to join for the remainder of your term, you know, as it stood when you were on those boards, and then you'd also be eligible for reappointment if you would have been eligible in your prior committee. So that's just trying to say, hey, everybody, we're still
Right.
all hoping to get everyone's energy if you want to have it.
Right.
And so, but if you don't want to proceed, you don't have to. If more than 9 members join, they won't be replaced when their terms end until the number's reduced to 9, and then we'll stay at 9 after that. So that's the idea. The other thing is, at CSEC, they asked if we could find some way to highlight that we'd really like to recruit at least one youth member when we
love
get
that.
to the chance. Yeah.
Yes, that's great. And we had talked about that as well for CAB and previous meetings.
Okay. So
Right. No, thank you for those updates. Appreciate that. So CSEC did actually vote in the affirmative to make this change, but nothing would go into effect until we have a chance to discuss it, and that's
And
what
the
I
select board
can
hasn't
do
discussed
tonight.
it.
And the select board hasn't discussed. So this is just to vote whether, you know, we present it to the select board as an potential change for the future. So I would love to hear from, you know, current CAB members what your thoughts are related to potential combination of these two groups. Paul, yeah.
Yeah, I have a comment.
Okay.
I think it makes sense to combine these two groups. Just going through the purpose and the duties and responsibilities, it's not clear where supporting vulnerability assessments and adaptation fit in this. It's a little, the wording is not clear. Like under purpose, it says, you know, the purpose of the committee, of the new committee, chief objectives of the climate action resilience plan, including climate resilience. Okay, so it's sort of in there. Then a duty and responsibility, it only says review Concord's climate related data to report annual progress relative to blank, 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 blank vulnerability assessments. And I think, so it's like, if we want to support the town and recommend to the town that they do a vulnerability assessment and
Mhm.
help monitor that assessment, where would that fit into this purpose?
Hmm.
And duties and responsibilities?
It's a good question. I mean, I have thoughts, but I want Brad, I don't remember, Brad or Jake, you can go next.
Yeah, I had a few comments. I've been thinking about this for a couple of years, because what we really want is effective committee, because making use of volunteer hours are precious. And so whatever we do, we want to empower the people on this committee to get some work done between committee meetings and bring it to the committee to for the larger group to say, oh yeah, we approve this, make some decisions, moving things forward, and avoiding, people coming once a month to find out what's going on. Which I've seen before. In my view, this going along with this would be a couple of subcommittees and maybe a couple of working groups that are pushing forwards the real detailed work. It's hard to have 9 people sit around a table and really do detailed work on exactly how do we move this forward. I wanted to pass on a comment that Charlie Parker made, who I don't think was able to come. He said that he's surprised that the charge didn't say anything about the climate action plan per se. And he suggested adding some wording to the effect of ensuring that Concord's climate action plan is updated annually with respect to strategies, goals, and objectives. And providing an updated plan to the select board to be approved annually or something like that. That was Charlie's comment.
Yeah, good comment. Okay. All right, so, and Jake, let's just get the comments out there before we talk about potential revisions or what have you. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
You can.
Awesome. Well, it's been a while. It's been several meetings, and I miss you guys. Glad to be here. I just wanted to speak up and say I think overall this makes a lot of sense. I support combining the committees. I think it will make some of those processes for the rest of the town departments that much more efficient, and for the sustainability director, and I think ensure that we have sufficient volunteers who are participating, and then waiting in the wings to join the group to fill in for folks who depart. I think kind of building on the comments from Paul and Brad, I think it would be good for folks to provide some feedback on this specific charter and any concerns or items that they think are missing based on the existing CAB charter, and and potentially CSEC as well, although we probably shouldn't comment for them. But yeah, just wanted to say overall I support it.
Okay.
Likewise, I think it makes a lot of sense. As a new member, I've kind of struggled with the differentiation and distinction between the two groups. So, as my very early uninformed opinion, it seems to kind of make sense.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? A comment, Brian?
I've lost count, but I'll second, third, fourth the comments. I think it makes sense.
Okay, so that's good. I mean, it sounds like general support for kind of consolidating, streamlining the effort a bit. But I hear Paul's concern that is there an adequate focus on resilience and adaptation, in addition to and I think this has been a discussion, honestly, that this board has had since I started on CAB, particularly, is kind of the tension between mitigation efforts and adaptation and resilience. And I guess if we just go to the plan that exists, Sustainable Concord, that is meant to be both, right? It's meant to represent both. So I think from that regard, if we use that as our foundation, I think it, we should make sure that it covers kind of both areas adequately. I like also, and hopefully the rest of the group does, Brad, the comment from your friend or colleague, Charlie, or a fellow citizen.
Fellow citizen.
I think that we as CAB have sort of danced around what do we do about reporting and tracking of the climate action plan and how we're doing related to that or against that. And I feel like Amanda, in her short tenure with us, was just starting to get something going there, but then really left before we got too far into that. And so I think it is worth making sure that our, I guess, the duties and responsibilities capture that. I like the idea of some sort of regular interval of update there, whether it's a year, I don't know. That's, I don't know if we get to decide that as a board or if that's a town, as much a town directed thing, because it's, there is a considerable effort to update. I do think some regular report out on metrics is important. And I don't know that we've done that since we put that Sustainable Concord plan together in a meaningful way. So I guess at this point, so what Matt, you showed us is with some minor modifications from CSEC. That's what CSEC has, what they voted on, correct?
Yes, they said, well, they made their vote saying, substantially in alignment with, in order to give CAB some latitude to put in their
Okay.
input and still, not have to re-vote.
Right.
So
I guess maybe my question to you is, I would like to take a vote in support tonight, but do we have the opportunity to?
Well,
implement
what
on a
I was
couple of
going to
those
suggest is,
items?
I realize that a community editing in a Zoom meeting is a
Never works.
really bad thing. But let me just at least highlight just 2 or 3 things. First of all, is I found there was a typo. Programs to reduce GSG reductions is what it used to say. So emissions.
Okay.
Then I think that the feedback that I got here was that we need it sort of in tandem with this one about sustainable energy practices. We need something about resiliency initiatives, right?
Yeah.
We need a bullet on that.
Yeah, I
sounds
think
like.
so.
Okay,
think
and
so.
I don't think we need to wordsmith it right here, but I think that if someone here in this group could take a crack and send me your suggestions. And then the last one, I think that Charlie Parker's suggestion, I do think is good. There are sort of 2 different ways that we could do it. One is either roll it into the first bullet, but I actually think it's distinct from reporting annual progress.
Yep.
But then the other thing I'm a little concerned about is annually updating a plan. My familiarity with our other municipal types of plans that we have. So, we have the open space plan, we have the strategic plan for recreation, we have the long range plan, we have the housing production plan. So all of these sort of regularly updated strategic documents, they either have an interval of every 5 years or every 10 years.
Yeah.
They don't typically have a 1-year interval. That's just, as you mentioned, is very heavy. So, I would suggest that we have, at every 5 years. And of course, the plan was published 2018, right?
No, 2020.
Okay,
2020,
2020.
yeah,
Okay, so you got a little bit of
2018.
time.
Yeah,
Okay,
2018 was the updated
okay.
general plan, right?
I recommend that we say every 5 years. Person-
I think we got to keep our eye on this ball.
Okay, but
And maybe it's 3 years or something, or 5 years is halfway to 2030.
how about this? We could also say as needed.
As
Yeah.
needed. Yeah.
I think I guess I hesitate to put an exact frequency in a committee charge. I think it has to be Carrie and town manager probably and or select board who would dictate that if you're going to put in a specific
Yeah, I mean, there's
timer on that.
a budgetary impact of,
Exactly. Yeah, it costs quite a bit to put it together. So
okay.
But I think there are a couple comments. So I like that. So we can maybe Paul, maybe you and I can go back and forth on a little resiliency language and get that over to Matt. There are a couple more comments, so I want to make sure. Jake?
And I should mention that
Oh.
we have canceled our select board meeting of the 23rd. So
okay.
we will not be discussing this revised charge until January 30th. So there
Okay.
is still ample
A little
time,
time. Okay.
for any other individual comments.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Jake, you had a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, raise a concern about signing up CAB to be leading updates to the plan or to be ultimately responsible for tracking metrics against the KPIs in the plan. I think fundamentally that has to be the various town departments and the sustainability team's role within town to own those metrics and any, proposing any adjustments or updates. I think CAB, whatever the future climate committee's role should be, is ensuring that those metrics and progress updates are provided, and that there is pressure and input on the departments to ensure that progress is being made. But I don't think we wouldn't, this climate committee wouldn't necessarily be doing the plan. We would be advising on the plan in collaboration with the sustainability director and the rest of the town. So that's just my feedback, just to make sure that the roles are clear.
That's a good comment. So the way that it's worded related to the data is, I think, is okay. It says review, that we would review the data, which I think is right. We would review the data and we would comment and we would
Yeah, that makes sense.
advise. So I think that's okay. Maybe it's the word update. So if we as a group would not be updating the report, right? We would likely be reviewing, advising. Maybe there are better words there, but
Yeah, provide input to and adopt.
yeah,
They're revised.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
Brad, you had a comment?
It's a question, and it's ideally we want to have all hands on deck and be working together with other organizations and other citizens that are not necessarily on the committee. And this is a question for Eric and maybe also for Matt. In Wayland, on your energy committee, you have something called an associate member, which are people that have a seat at the table, but they don't vote. They don't count towards quorum. And I'm not exactly clear how that works, but I don't even know if it's germane to the charge, but I don't know if that exists in Concord, and I
No,
wonder.
we do have that. We
have that?
definitely have that. Yeah. We
What-
have in various committees. So, I mean, for example, the Historic Districts Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, they have associate members who become, like, for example, on the ZBA, an associate member is a voting member if other members or full member missing for the night. Otherwise, they're
Okay.
non-voting.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So,
If that was something we wanted to consider, would that need to be in the
charge, we
charge.
could define an associate member level. It's just that, I don't know, do people want to sign up for that? You know?
It's just a way of being inclusive
Yeah.
and saying, oh, you know, we value you working with us. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just a
Well,
thought.
I mean, it's something that, you know, let's say there are some folks who have a particular interest, right, as it relates to the work. Like, let's say there's, you know, a group that really wants to help out on the vulnerability assessment work, but isn't, you know, but aren't necessarily interested in joining every meeting or what have you. It would be a way to, well, I don't know, Matt, maybe that you can comment on that. Would it
Well,
be
the
a
other
way to have
way
a
is you could be-
subcommittee?
Yeah, you could be a
Sit
member of the
down.
subcommittee and not a member of the committee.
Yeah,
That's another thing. You know, there could be subcommittees. So, yep.
does that need to be reflected in the charge that would be?
Well, I was leaving that
Allowed or-
open because I think that the committee can form its subcommittees as it sees fit.
Okay, and the subcommittee members don't have to be a full committee member.
No,
They-
they don't
Is that
have-
right? Okay. Okay. So maybe as long as that avenue is there, we've covered it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, well, I think at this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to support this combining of the Climate Action Committee. I wish I had the language that CSEC used. We could just use that. But if somebody would be willing to sort of offer a motion of our support to basically present this to the select board as a change to move forward, to move our climate action groups forward, I guess. Maybe one of you all can come up with better wording than I just did. Is anybody willing to make a motion?
I move that we vote on the proposal to merge CSEC and CAB with the provision that we can subsequently amend the details of the language of the proposal.
All right. Anyone second that?
I'll second that.
All in favor, raise your hand on video, please. All right.
Technically, you're supposed to do a
Jake.
roll call, but
Okay, let's do a roll call because I think I didn't do that at the beginning and I meant to. Brad, can you? Aye. Let's see, Ben,
Here, present.
and do you vote yay or nay?
Yay.
Okay. Gavin,
Yay.
Jake,
Yay.
Paul,
Yay.
myself, yay. Brian,
Yay.
all right. I think we have a valid vote with quorum even. That's very exciting. It's been a couple meetings. So, all right. Well, given that, I think we are a bit off of our agenda, but not by a lot. So let's do a quick check-in if we can, related to our work plans. And I really just have three items, the last one being the financing memo. So, you know, I don't know if Jake and Paul, if you can keep it to like about 5 minutes, just a quick check in with the group. I know there's been a little bit of movement on the vulnerability assessment. I don't know, Jake, if you don't mind giving us an update, that'd be great.
I have not made much progress at all. In fact, I know I need help with taking kind of the foundation that I've pulled together and bring it to the kind of the next stage.
Yeah.
And I think frankly, it'll benefit to have at least one other person involved in thinking about this topic and doing additional engagement at the state level and at the community level to make sure we have something to bring back to CAB or the new committee around, where we think this could play a role potentially in town. So I have missed a couple of meetings that another group and another advocacy group in town has been holding around this topic, but I have access to the videos, and I've been access to a variety of other materials. I just haven't been able to spend the time. I've just been too busy with work and other life stuff. So
sure.
And if need be, I'm happy, if it makes sense, I can pass this on, but I'm certainly willing to spend time meeting with someone, kind of downloading, providing input, and being involved to the extent I can. But I just don't think it's not fair for me to be kind of sitting on this the way I have for this long. So
well, I think given that we just voted to kind of rework the charge, we have a new sustainability director on board. I think it likely makes sense to revisit all initiatives, right? And see, where we're at, what are the highest top priorities. I still suspect that this one will make the list. We've made progress so far. And so hopefully we can get renewed energy into that. So don't feel bad about where you're at. We'll just keep pressing forward. And you can share, the progress you have made. And hopefully we can, with more numbers, we can actually make some progress. So, Paul, I actually just read what John put together. John was able to put together I don't know if it's yet a proposal, but at least a start on what we could be looking at related to a vulnerability assessment. You want to share more of that or a little bit?
Yeah, I thought it was a good
high
start.
level?
I thought it was a good start. I just wonder, since most of this committee work in the past has been about, energy management, if this group are familiar with a vulnerability assessment and adaptation plan. And if not, maybe John and I could just share one with you from, let's say, Cambridge or some other place. That would be helpful. So
Yeah.
people understand what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, Paul.
Okay. So
yeah.
So John and I will find a couple of examples for this committee
I think that would be great.
of good municipal vulnerability assessment and adaptation plans. And then once we know that, we'll know what we want to know. Once we know that, we'll know what we want to ask the town for. But
I know I believe, and this was right before the holidays, I was on the email to review the hazard mitigation plan. I did not get I didn't get the chance to because of my own schedule. But I think that, Eric, if as we're considering scope for a vulnerability assessment, it might be helpful to have access to that if we can, that draft hazard mitigation plan. I don't know if that's allowed at this point or not, but to see what's in that, to understand how that, either maybe there's no overlap, but I would guess there's some. I know I was asked for a specific piece of information related to some of the wastewater infrastructure. So I know at least that supposedly made it in there, I think. So just making sure that we are drawing on, what the town has already worked on, and then building on that.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so I think that the hazard mitigation plan that the town did, the update this year was, I believe it was in December when I first started, that it was open to public comment. So I'm not sure exactly where that
Where it
stands
stands.
right now, yeah, in terms of it being finalized, but I'm sure we can get in some way get the language and be able to share that.
Yeah, or even get the schedule for when they plan to publish it. That'd
Yeah.
be fine. So, or maybe the version that was available for draft comment, if it was out for public comment, we should be able to see that at least.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then I think that's a great update. So Paul, I intend to review, like I said, I read through it. I didn't comment yet, but I'm going to. I'd like to see your comments as well. But I think ideally we'd like to get at least from my perspective, a scope of work that we could, present to, I think it's probably through Eric to the town manager, or I'm not sure what group would sponsor the vulnerability assessment. I don't know if it would be Public Works. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe it's just, out of the town manager's office, but a scope of work that would say, this is what we need, make it easy to go out and, potentially get teams that are willing to bid on it. I think it would be helpful if we can come up with an idea of a cost for this level of assessment, and maybe it's a phased, maybe it's a phased approach. I know something that, from a public infrastructure side, there are lots of grants out there for public infrastructure work, but we're not getting them as Concord because of kind of our status and particularly related to vulnerability and that sort of thing. We don't have enough environmental justice in the community. We don't, they're just not handing it to us. So how can we make it attractive, or how can we make it affordable to do these efforts? Because they're not cheap. I know that. So might be something that maybe you and John and I could think about a little bit. Okay. Let's see. And then let's revisit for just a few minutes, and we probably don't have, and we could probably maybe talk for about 10 minutes or so. I believe I shared, and I apologize for not thinking to do it this time, but I believe I shared prior to our November meeting, the financing memo that Warren Leon put together back in the spring. And that it was just before he stepped off to move to the CMLP board. There's a lot of great information in there. And I want to talk with this group, and hopefully Gavin, Ben, Brad, you were able to at least peruse it and you know what I'm talking about. But I'd like us to have a brief conversation of what do we do with that good information? Do we just hold it until we kind of revisit, initiatives potentially with the combined committee? Do we, offer that over to CMLP for them to take a look at, especially if they're starting to think about strategic planning? There may be other alternatives I haven't considered, but what, as a group, what thoughts do we have about what to do with that information that Warren, spent a fair bit of time, I think, pulling together? And just as a quick background, because Eric probably doesn't have an idea of what I'm talking about, but Warren was a previous member of the board. He put together some ideas for incentive programs for residential electrification, basically. You know, a kind of above and beyond what's out there now, things that CMLP could consider to really drive, you know, drive this conversation of conversions of significant, hopefully, numbers of, you know, residents to electrification. And I'm really looking to anyone who has more knowledge on the energy side than I do, because that is not my forte.
I don't know where that document is. Maybe I
Okay.
can dig it up. Do we keep document like Warren came up with on the webpage, the town webpage for CAB? Is there a way a citizen can get that and look at it?
Not currently, not currently. I do wonder, Eric, it's something for you to think about. I do wonder if it would be helpful for us to have a SharePoint site or Google Drive, something that there's a repository of all of, you know, either CAB or maybe now it's Climate Action Committee documents that at least the membership is, you know, can access. Because I know for me in particular, that was a real difficulty. I had to go dig through and find it because I didn't even have access to it. Everything was sort of in the vault that was the sustainability director files that, you know, we as the board members don't have access to. So something for you to think about, maybe put on your probably very long list of to-dos.
Yeah, I'll be happy to look into that. I'm just kind of getting used to myself with yeah,
Sure.
with SharePoint, not having
Oh,
used it
sure,
before, but
sure.
yeah, but I know, I mean, I know there's a CAB folder in there. So yeah, I'll look into the potential for accessibility of that.
Yeah, so anybody else have any thoughts, or is it too removed since it was back in November that I shared it? And I'm thinking no.
I think
All
we
right.
should share it again.
All right. So we will do that. And maybe it's just a tabling for now until, you know, until if we combine committees and we start to rediscuss initiatives, I think it should be on there. And so we'll make sure that everybody has access to that, hopefully in a shared file that you can review. So
I think that's, sorry.
yeah, no, go for it,
I
Ben.
think that's the part where I kind of chimed in back in October, November. Just my background's in finance, so happy to lend
Yeah.
support to that as far as coming up with new creative ways, especially because I'm going through it now. And so I'm installing a Tesla solar roof on my roof. So I'm
Great.
going through financing
Cool.
options, which I just went through it. I'm done
Yeah.
with it now, but I've kind of gone through it fresh as a resident of Concord. So
Great.
I can help with that. I don't
Yeah.
happy to. If
Were you able to see the memo, or
this time or last time?
back? I would have been before the November meeting, I believe.
I saw part of it. So if I'm looking at
Okay.
the October meeting, it looks like it's in the packet.
Okay.
The October. So I'd kind of gone through it back and
Okay.
prepped the October meeting.
All right, perfect.
Put some of those things. Yep.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right, so let's table that for now. And I think all three of those initiatives should be moved forward, but I think, you know, worth maybe combining with, you know, additional initiatives that we've talked about throughout the fall related to transportation, possibly composting, although there was some debate on that. So that might be something to, you know, to debate a little bit more as we talk initiatives. And then I wanted to give Gavin a quick, a minute to kind of throw out there another thought that I think you brought up maybe the last meeting, but why don't you bring it up again as a potential that we could add to the list?
Yeah, definitely. So this is sort of a topic that I'm hoping to add to my sort of work plan, and as well get feedback for how to go about sort of achieving this goal if we do think it's a good idea. So the idea is for the town of Concord to, well, two things. So the first is that in town parking lots, if we could install solar panel canopies over the parking lots to do two things. One of them is obviously for solar power, renewable energy that lessens the use on fossil fuels for the town. And I think this is really important because a lot of the town is obviously conservation land, and we're not going to plow a forest to put a solar panel array. So parking lots are already developed land in the town. So if we were able to put the canopies over it, it would be great for electricity source. And I'd look to coordinate with CMLP on that. And even this article that we showed talking about solar panel initiatives in the town. And then secondly, why I think they could be a good idea is they're on the adaptation side. You know, as it's going to get hotter and hotter in the town as the decades go forward, it would be helpful as well to reduce the heat sink effect in our parking lots around the town.
Sure.
So the solar panel canopies have been shown to increase reflectivity and reduce heat in parking lots. It also helps reduce electricity rates in nearby buildings. And so, you know, I think that's the first step would be if we were able to get it in town parking lots. I'm thinking the town parking lot behind Concord Center, the high school would be great. And then secondly, if we were maybe able to, as a committee, to recommend legislation for the select board that says, you know, if there's parking lots in the town over a certain square footage and area or over a certain parking spot space, we could then say this CMLP needs to sort of talk to them about solar panel canopies, or the business itself, the land manager needs to install solar panel canopies. I'm thinking that would be the big parking lot in front of Emerson Hospital, the Concord Meadows Corporate Center. You know, just looking at a satellite map of the town, you can just spot from high up above where these big parking lots are. I think it could be a good initiative that sort of tackles those two birds with one stone, is the adaptation, but also mitigation side. And so, yeah, that's something I'm personally interested in. I'd love to hear feedback about, you know, maybe next steps or how to do that, how to, you know, if I do add that to my work plan, how to get in touch with CMLP or working with you, Eric.
Any thoughts or feedback for Gavin on that?
I love it. I'm planning on doing it on the commercial side with my startup. So with all commercial properties, that's what my startup aims to do, is to install solar arrays over apartment complexes, car dealerships, etc. So that's, yeah, you have my vote for sure. Another point, Sudbury is looking to implement that in their master plan within the next 5 or 6 years. That was a comment that came up in their July meeting. The planning director somebody had mentioned, you know, brought it up, whatnot, and the planning director said that's probably about 5 years, maybe 10 years out to actually incorporate that into their master plans for future developments or whatnot. And so I know adjacent towns are also kind of considering this, or this is kind of on their mind.
And I know Lincoln Sudbury High School has solar panel canopies for a couple of years
Acton
now.
does as well.
Wayland does too.
They're popping up. Yep.
Yeah, Carlisle has some. Yeah, Matt. Oh, where'd you go? Oh, you're on mute.
I was just listening to these ideas and of course was thinking of the petition warrant article that is on the annual town warrant for the in-town solar generation task force, and this would be prime material, you know, for that, should that pass.
Yeah, Gavin, I think we've got our representative right there.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help with that.
Okay.
I mean, you know, it's a great combination of, you know, your passion and you know, that need, if hopefully that gets the affirmative to move forward. So
of course, a big distinction between town-owned property and commercial-owned property, and and CMLP would need to accept commercial entities building a lot of solar, which they do not now.
That's where my startup comes in, Brad. So I'll take the commercial side.
Well,
Yeah, I wonder with if CMLP would be interested in sort of conducting like a PPA if they were to install the solar panel canopies and then partner with the businesses on that side. And so the excess energy goes to the town. I guess I'd have to delve more into that.
Right.
Yeah, there are some grid issues in town.
And not to say this can't be overcome, but I think there will be or could be pushback on aesthetics, even though it's the right thing to do. And it's, you know, for all the good reasons. And I think there will be folks who, you know, are concerned about the aesthetics, especially that lot right behind Concord Center, right? And, you know, it could be good and it could be tough at the same time. So I think it's it's something that would have to be, you know, addressed and thought about. But it seems like from what Matt showed us in that warrant, that's the point of that task force, is to figure out, you know, some of those issues and how can aesthetics and solar energy coexist, right? And how can we do that to the benefit of all? So seems like right up what you're, you know, the alley of what you're thinking about. So
yeah, definitely. So it sounds like be good to add to my sort of personal work plan, and then I'll make sure to be in touch with you about how to connect with that task force if it does get set up and look into that.
Absolutely. Okay. Great. All right. And then just a few minutes, Brad, I don't know if you wanted to give an update from the community of practice that you're involved with.
Sure. I happen to, so this is about a meeting that Mass Energize held a week ago, and that's the nonprofit that I spend most of my time with. Concord is a subscriber to Mass Energize by hosting the community web platform that's at coolerconcord.org. We also, the nonprofit also does some playbooks and toolkits for different sorts of engagement. But the third thing is this community of practice, which is a monthly meeting that we have where we get a bunch of community leaders together to talk about strategies, ideas, collaborations on sustainability. And at the meeting last week, it's the second Monday of every month, we should have another person that goes to it. There's a lot of information to be shared. We had a talk from two people from Brookline. Brookline is they are very serious about
Absolutely.
Emissions reduction.
Yeah.
And so there was two people. Lisa Cunningham was the founder of a group called ZeroCarbonMA.org. It's a new nonprofit. And Wendy Stahl. So Zero Carbon MA is founded by, in order to expand what Brookline is doing to go statewide. I can share the slides. I don't want to go through them right now, but I will share what was in them, and I'll send a link around. So Wendy was part of a 5-person town committee in Brookline called the Zero Emissions Advisory Board that reports to their select board. And that group this year proposed 6 town meeting articles that are climate related, and 4 of them passed. So they were very, you know, and I'll just mention what they were. We already mentioned that they passed the specialized stretch code at their town meeting 2 weeks ago. That wasn't one of these. That was done by somebody else. The first article they proposed was expanding powers of their community choice aggregation. Now that's an important for some communities. It's not for us because we have automatic aggregation through CMLP. They passed a resolution asking the state to adopt opt-in methane tax on consumer natural gas bills. That is, with the revenue supporting local emissions reduction. So they have to ask the state to make that legal to do, because there's state laws that presumably need to be followed. They also asked the state through a home rule petition for permission to establish a loan program in town. So if we wanted to do something as a loan program, we would have, if there were state regulations that prohibited us from doing something, we would have to do that same sort of a thing. They asked the state permission to supersede building code using zoning bylaws for sustainability measures to reduce emissions beyond what is in the stretch code, the new stretch code. In particular, they wanted to require not net zero like we've been talking about, but also more than 20% EV parking, some detail. And those are the ones that passed, some of them only by a little bit. I think they have representative town meeting as opposed to open town meeting like we have. The things that didn't pass were they tried to pass a property tax surcharge to fund emissions reduction programs. And also an excise tax surcharge on gas-powered vehicles over a certain value to fund EV charging infrastructure. That's kind of an interesting one we could get our minds around. So I was kind of impressed with, and so several of those articles were, okay, we're not going to do something right away. We're going to ask the state to allow us to do something. So they didn't even necessarily have the really detailed stuff figured out about how would we use this money if we got it. It would be kind of like funding emissions reduction. So these were for them, some of them are fairly easy lifts. I was just impressed with it and impressed with what the Zero Carbon MA organization is doing. You can check their website out. There's some good information there.
It makes me think that we should be kind of watching them, right? And to see, for some ideas, maybe even thinking about inviting them to a meeting.
We could, and
potentially.
we should be thinking early on about next year's town meeting. Okay, what are the missing links here? What's preventing us from taking that next step? And then, doing enough community outreach to know that something will fly or not fly, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Brad, for sharing that. If you could send around the link to the slides, that would be great.
Sure.
And also maybe include in that note, just reminder of when the meetings are. You said the second Monday of the month, I think.
Right.
Okay.
It's not like an open meeting where another 10 people from Concord can come. It's more like two or three people from a community.
But maybe it's a maybe we can designate
cool.
someone.
Okay.
All right. Well, given the time, I just wanted to open the floor to public comment. If there's nothing else, just let me check. Just nothing else from CAB related to new business or anything we've already discussed tonight that you wanted to bring up. All right. With that, Pamela, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to share?
Pamela, 13 Concord Green. Forgot to say my address before. Sorry.
That's okay.
We all know your address.
Open meeting laws, right?
That's right. That's right.
I love them.
That's good.
One of the things that I think we should consider when we're doing solar canopy over parking lots, wonderful idea. I think we can overcome the, oh, those are ugly issue pretty easily by listing out the actual financial and comfort benefits of them, is to incorporate trying to get battery backup to go with them.
Hmm.
Because we need to do that in order to green the energy supply anyway.
Sure.
Concord, I've been going to the light plant meetings for a long time, and they're planning to sell excess power back to neighboring communities or power plants in order to deal somewhat with the solar saturation problem that Concord currently has to make the grid right. I think I've got this right. But they're also planning to put to the middle school. They've got the plans well in hand, or at least developed. I'm not sure what they are. I'm not sure they're maximizing the ability, maximizing the installation they could do, both canopy wise and battery wise. And I think we need to encourage them that it's not competition. It's like Gavin, you mentioned a local virtual power plant in the community. We need to make sure that the new meters can support that kind of thing, or at least won't prohibit it. So I think it's important to get batteries and solar, and the idea that we need to maximize what we can do. And if you have the batteries with the solar, you don't need to worry about grid saturation so much. And Ben, you know a lot about that with your house. If you could, like, I don't know that the light plant is even looking at Tesla at all. They're just
15 days of battery storage with my unit, to your point about battery storage.
I think we should, yeah. How much could the battery installation at the new junior high school substitute for the backup generator? Plus, when we have electric school buses, we can use those as mobile backup generator batteries and make it so you don't need any generators anymore, and save a ton of money, and use the buses as battery generators to balance the grid as great mobile emergency vehicles. A lot in the summertime when we have excess energy from solar anyway, and the school buses aren't being used. You can fill them up and then use them to power things free.
Interesting idea. Matt, I was going to ask you, do you know the next step on the middle school solar analysis?
There's another article on the annual town meeting, so that the municipal light plan is putting forward for $13 million for the installation at the middle school, to be repaid though through rates, through the, so it wouldn't be going as a debt exclusion item.
Okay.
Now, I have not worked out, and nor have I seen the analysis of, well, what does that equate to is, dollars per kilowatt hour, or,
Right.
does it make economic sense on the face of it? And, is the plan utilizing all of the potential that it could? I don't know anything about any of that, other than that there is an article on the annual town meeting warrant to forward this plan. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Pamela, I think you should make sure you attend that public hearing, and we all can too, if we can make it to hear.
Yeah, it would be at the finance committee public hearing in March.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. good to know the details.
Also, we gotta remember to put the costs of not doing when we're talking about the cost of these big projects, we
Mhm.
need to also add in what we would save in energy. And also include some number for the increase in the health of the community, especially kids, and a number for the externalized cost savings from not using fossil fuel.
Hmm.
Plus the actual, even if you don't include those, the benefits financially of this kind of energy supply infrastructure, it pays itself off in savings pretty quickly now.
Hmm.
And then you get free energy, essentially.
Mhm.
So the cost of energy in the future, the more we have solar installations, the lower it's going to be for everybody. And that has to be included in the deliberations, along with, gee, it's millions of dollars to put this thing in, and it's ugly.
Sure.
Matt, do you happen to know what size system they're looking at for 13 million?
Oh, I have not, I'm
pretty
not
high.
the liaison to
I don't want to put you on the spot either.
the municipal light board, so I have not followed this plan, and unfortunately, I don't have any details, so I'm
Ben,
very
I want-
curious, but I don't know.
Okay.
Brian knows, Brian Folds.
Sure.
Wanted to-
Sure,
to
sure,
meet with him
no,
anyway,
definitely.
maybe-
And, we should try to learn what they're proposing before
Yeah.
it gets down that road.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
read about a school that did that, put solar in, and they used the excess power that they generated to add bonuses to teacher salaries. It
I-
paid for itself so quickly, and
Yep.
it generated
Yeah.
money for the school system.
Just on that point, and it's more just curiosity. So, and I know it's already been past us, but on the middle school, it's I'd been told that it was too cost prohibitive to install geothermal. Yet Acton Boxborough is doing it.
I don't think they looked. Did they look? I
There
wasn't-
was a cost analysis
They
done.
did, yeah.
Yeah,
They
there
did.
was.
But our neighbor said we can make it work. But yeah, anyways, just more of a curiosity.
No, they did a cost analysis, and ended up where they are, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but they do the cost analysis, including the savings? I don't think
Of
they do.
course. Yes, they do.
Yeah,
But I didn't necessarily believe their cost analysis. They started the process with the assumption that we really want to do air source. And when when you start with that assumption, you get a different set of costs. But
All right. Well, just we're right at time. If I could just, given that we did, we passed a vote to combine committees. Matt, you said that your next select board meeting will be January 30th. So we'll hear after that what the select board decides on this. And if the select board passes, can we assume then that what?
well,
for
so the steps would be,
set of meetings.
that we would nominate people, and I think it would be pretty perfunctory. The nominations that we would make to staff the new committee.
Okay. Okay.
Then secondly, we would disband the two existing committees. So
Okay.
that would probably come in Feb, so I would suggest there's likely to be one more meeting at least of each of the committees.
Okay. Okay.
Independently, but I guess we could on Jan 30th do the whole thing. We could put in the nominations, we could do the whole bit, if everybody's on board.
Okay. Okay. Who decides that?
Well, I think what I'd like to do is, we've got this sort of draft 4 of the charge going around.
Okay.
I think it's kind of rushing it to do that personally. I think it's better to, get the select board to review and vote on the draft. Who knows? They may have different views. And then we
Maybe.
take the next steps. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that seems fair. So
Yeah, so I think you can.
For
assume
this-
You've got one more meeting. anyway.
yeah, all right. So for CAB, we will meet at least one more time, likely in February for a final meeting, and hopefully, if not before, Matt can update us on, you know, the results of the conversation on the 30th with the select board, and then we can talk next
Yeah.
steps, what that
Yeah,
looks.
and I think, you know, we would like folks to kind of submit their names if they want to join. I'm hoping as many
Okay.
people do, you know, as can.
Okay. Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay.
Okay.
Good, thank you. But it was been on my mind. I was sure it was on others' minds, so I just wanted to make sure we had a quick conversation about that. All right, well, with that, any other public comment that we didn't get to? All right, being that it's 9:02, I strive to be done early or on time. Thank you
You need-
so much for your participation tonight, and I heard a comment, Brad, I think.
Do you need motion to adjourn, or is that automatic?
We
mandate?
don't need it anymore, I
Okay, then let's
understand.
get outta
So
here.
we are good. I can just say thank you again and have a great rest of your January. Go to a special town meeting tomorrow night if you can. Vote.
See everybody. Y'all have a
All
good
right.
night.
Thank you. Good
See
night.
you.
night.
Thank you.